What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, philosophy, the right way, with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world, first-hand experience. What are we going to dive into today? How about modern long gun philosophy? That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. To establish some bona fides as to why you should listen, I'm going to put in the bio. If you want to skip around 2 minutes, and we'll get into this deep philosophical discussion on modern long gun philosophy. If you could, while you're listening to the bio or fast forwarding through it, like, subscribe, hit some stars, leave a review. I appreciate you. I'll roll into a quick abbreviated bio and then into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, He got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor, an urban warfare instructor and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years, also NRA certified and some other three-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a three-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, He got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because He chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast and elk and bear and wolf and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. Enough about me, guys. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. Let's get into today's topic. Alright there, gunfighters. You have the patrons to thank for this. One of the people on the Patreon page submitted this question. Modern long gun philosophy. So let us reason. Let's think about this. And I, as the young kids would say, I sussed this out on an episode just for patrons that is just on the Patreon page a while ago, talking about modern rifle philosophy, and I kind of reasoned through it with myself, and that's where I kind of sussed out some of these ideas. Really, I really put some deep thought into this, and you may disagree, but that's fine. Again, you heard my background, training, and experience. Your background, training, and experience may lead you down a different path, and that's okay. Modern long gun philosophy. So the subtitle of Gunfighter Life is Survival Guns. There's a duality to me of survival, which is defense of your life and the life of others, because you shall love your neighbor as yourself, right? Anything I would do to defend my own life, I should be willing to do to defend my neighbor's life. And putting food on the table. Let us remember, men, that food does not come wrapped in cellophane or in a plastic wrapper. That's not where it originates from. It comes from the beating heart of an animal. It comes off the hoof. It comes off of a stalk. Roots, fruits, and shoots. And that's real food. Although today it is easy to go to the store and buy a chicken in a plastic bag, or even more processed chicken nuggets frozen in a bag or whatever, that's not how food originates. And I think you as a man ought to be able to put food on the table. People, and rightfully so, right? Food has gone up a lot in price in the last several years. And I don't want to harp on that, but have you seen the price of food? Have you seen the price of food? It's outrageous. Okay, well, what if the store has no food? What if there is no food at the store? What if there is no store? Can you put food on the table? And can you defend one's home and table where you and your family eat? It's kind of the duality of survival to me. So in that, I kind of look at the realistic aspects. Now, there's a beautiful aspect of riflemanship, of being a rifleman, of being a good shotgunner. There's a beautiful thing of just the art of that. Like, you could have somebody that is way better at shooting skeet than I am, that will never ever hunt. You could have, an F-class shooter that's way, way better at 1,000-yard rifle competitions than I am. World champion F-class shooter that'll never take meat off the hoof, that will never, and has maybe a pacifist, maybe has no desire. I don't know if they are, but I'm just saying they could do that and have no desire, have no will to ever use a rifle in a martial aspect. There is a beauty that comes with being able to wield a tool well, whether it's a hammer or a rifle or a golf club or a tennis racket. But I'm talking about practical aspects, because I think that's probably why you tune in most of the time. The practical aspects of this. And I think in regular times, whatever regular is, even if we are in the new normal, whatever that is, the most likely one of those in semi-normal times for a long gun, maybe not if we talked about handguns, but for a long gun, is hunting. It's putting meat on the table. Because you can go do that every year, year after year, in regular times or bad times. You can take your long gun out and put meat on the table and feed your family. We quite often eat venison. We also quite often forage, but let's stick to the long gun thing for now. That's something that you can do. So I've talked about this before, but I think the shotgun is the most practical firearm category. Everybody, when they think of hunting, especially new hunters, I think they're always, deer, I want to go deer hunting, I want to shoot a deer. Way more practical to start with small game hunting. And small game hunting is way more practical and way more attainable in most places. Has far more liberal limits in most places, easier to do in most places, easier to get permission to hunt if you live east of the Mississippi and you need by somebody's leave to actually hunt, which is kind of sad. But that's where people choose to live, so that's on them. But it's easier to get permission to hunt small game. Longer seasons, more open seasons. If you added up all the small game that you could take, you might outweigh the weight of the one or two or several deer you can get every year. And shotgun will do all that. And I've harped on this before, so I'm going to briefly hit on it. But a shotgun, you can take anything from a dove flying in the air, pluck it out of the air, and put it on the table, to the biggest ungulate in North America, to defending yourself from an angry grizzly bear. The shotgun will do all that. They're cheap, relatively. They're very versatile. There's not a lot of, I'm sure there's some politicians that would like to ban every gun and every knife and gasoline cars and whatever. But of guns that are most on the hit list, shotguns aren't there. So they're affordable, they're versatile, they're effective, they're legal in most places. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. So the ability to put food on the table. A good hunting rifle too. You can hunt small game with a rifle. 22 is phenomenally versatile for that. And I know there's a certain subset out there that you can kill an elephant with a 22, and people kill deer with 22s all the time, and it's the most deadly round, and it slices and it dices, and it's the Ginsu Knife of the tactical world. But I'm going to tell you, it's best suited for small game. It's not nearly as versatile as a shotgun because it's harder to take game out of the air. Also, in many places, not legal for a lot of small game, if you include upland game birds and waterfowl. although it's perfectly adequate and will certainly put food on the table. You can certainly shoot and kill ducks physically with a .22, and it's a pretty good tool for it. You're not legally allowed to do it in most places. So it's not as versatile if we're talking about normal times. The shotgun is the most versatile. If we talk about hunting rifles, you talk about, and this is why the battery is important, and I've done episodes on a good battery, but a good center fire rifle capable of taking medium-sized game, because in America, we're blessed to be able to hunt. Now, I don't think hunting deer east of the Mississippi in a grid-down collapse type scenario is very viable. If you look at what happened to the deer population in the Great Depression east of the Mississippi, hunted almost to extinction, I've heard in many different places from many different people, hunted almost to extinction, and that was with 1930s numbers in population. Look at what the population is east of the Mississippi now compared to the 1930s, and tell me how long you're going to be hunting deer. But in normal times, if you live east of the Mississippi, which many of the listeners do, you can hunt deer. Because most people don't hunt. Most people would prefer to go to a big box store and buy a bag of Fritos or Doritos or whatever-os and stuff their face with them. Most people don't want to go out and hunt. But you can get really good healthy meat and put it on the table. And a good center fire rifle is good for that. So a good practical tool for putting meat on the table. It also should have a reasonable rate of fire. If we're talking about a practical gun, if you're just talking about a fun gunner, you want to challenge yourself and you want to hunt with a single shot. I hunted with a single shot, mostly because we were poor. I hunted with a single shot. But if you're looking at a practical gun, a single shot is very utilitarian. But if you need to press it into a dual roll, and most of the time hunting, you should only need one shot. But sometimes it takes more, even if it was a good shot, even if you did everything right. Sometimes, I know from decades of hunting and guiding, sometimes you need a quick follow-up shot, whether that's small game or large game or whatever. So a reasonable rate of fire. A reasonable rate of fire. The ability to get a quick follow-up shot. Also, for multiple targets. That opportunity might present itself. And I know you can reload a single shot, and you can do it relatively quickly if you practice, but if you put the same amount of practice into many other forms, bolt actions, slide actions, pump actions, and SemiAuto, of course, you're going to get faster follow-up shots. So I want a long gun with a reasonable rate of fire. You need to be able to deliver with your gun, not theoretically, not, some guy on the YouTubes shoots this gun out to 1,000 yards, and I have that gun, ergo, I can do that too. In theory, you could win the lottery this month. But in reality, you're probably not going to. So you need to be able to wield that tool effectively, getting fast, effective, especially first, but then secondary and tertiary hits on target. You need to be able to deliver fast, accurate hits on target, multiple hits on one target, or hits on separate targets at reasonable ranges in a variety of real-world field conditions. Standing, sitting, kneeling, prone, urban prone, braced around cover, things like that. With your gun, when fired by you, with your ammo that you know it's dialed in for, you and your weapon need to be able to do that at reasonable ranges. Now, what's reasonable ranges? This is a raging debate. But if you look at most real-world encounters since World War II, or even World War I, because in World War I, all these military rifles came measured in yards or meters or Martians out to like 1,200 yards. People thought, we've got these fancy new Spitzer bullets and these bottleneck cartridges. We're going to be slinging lead out to 1,200 yards. The reality of World War I and later World War II and other conflicts proved to be much different, and fighting is much closer and much nastier than that. The vast majority of the time. And there are outliers. But the vast majority of the time, fighting is dirty, up close, and personal. Now, I did 2 tours in Iraq. most of that was urban warfare. Now, Afghanistan did have some outliers with some longer engagements. But again, I think those were the outliers, not the rule. Reasonable ranges. What is your context, and what do you think you're going to be doing? I would say more like 125 yards. Well, let's just say 100 yards. 100 yards, people think that with all the modern technology, 100 yards is like super close distance. You can spit that far. 100 yards is a football field. A football field. Next time you see a high school football field, or don't get arrested or don't trespass, but next time you see a football field and you go stand at one end and look to the other on the gridiron, look 100 yards. That's a long way. And look at the normal environments that you're in. Can you even see 100 yards? In many places, the answer to that will be no. But let's say reasonable ranges, 300 yards. Without any of the dial turrets, without any of the crazy stuff, with a modern cartridge, if you're using a rifle, we're talking about a man-sized target, you could aim somewhere on that man-sized target and hit somewhere on that man-sized target if you use proper fundamentals. We're talking about real-world type, practical scenarios, standing, sitting, kneeling, prone. I'm not talking about using sandbags and braces and being a sniper. I've never been a sniper. I don't want to misrepresent that. I have been a designated marksman. But that, again, those are very unique outlier situations, and that's not what we're talking about today. Much more important that you can deliver fast, accurate hits on target up close than it is that you can lob them in at a great distance, because those generally don't happen very often. So being able to get fast, effective hits on target at reasonable ranges. Now, we're talking about 300 yards. The vast majority of real-world scenarios, if we're talking about defense, and even hunting, the vast majority of hunting, people think, I don't know, I think a lot of Easterners get bamboozled into thinking, I got to be able to shoot 1,000 yards to kill an elk, or 600 yards. Well, then how did all those elk die with a 30-30? You talk to people that actually hunt and guide and stuff out west that aren't into this like best of the west stuff, I'm sure they'll admit that most of those elk are taken within 300 yards. So we see that 300 yard benchmark. And if you look at the majority of cases, probably inside, if you look at the majority distance that whitetail are taken at, which is what most people hunt in America, and most small game, you're talking well inside that range. Now, if you're just the kind of person that's just going to buy a shotgun and buy slugs at Walmart and never sight it in, never practice with it, and go out and just launch them at a deer, probably stop listening to this podcast and go listen to something else. But if you actually go out and practice with your kit, with your equipment, if you, with a decent shotgun and a decent load that you've picked out and sighted in your shotgun like you would sight in a rifle, if you can't get hits on target at, let's say, 100 to 125 yards with a good load with a shotgun, that's probably on you, not the shotgun. And you have to ask yourself, is the versatility of the shotgun worth the giving up of the range? And you are going to give up some range, but you're going to get a lot of versatility. At close range, you're going to get a lot more round per round effectiveness. There is really no other common small arm that gives you the devastation of a 1 ounce slug or a full payload of double-aught buck or number 4 buck, right? A 1.25 ounce slug at 1,600 feet per second, 1,300 feet per second. That's nasty. A full payload of double-aught buck inside of 50 yards. Now, not all shotguns will give you all pellets on a target at 50 yards. You got to test that out. But that's devastating. 41 pellets a number 4 buck is a devastating load. So, is that worth it? It depends on what you're doing, right? I've said it's the most versatile. Do you want versatility? That's where I think a good battery comes in, right? If I'm just going elk hunting, I'm going to take a rifle. Now, if you gave me an extra elk tag and you said you got to use shotgun, I'd say, sweet. Grab the shotgun. I got no problem with that. I can probably stalk within 120 yards, 125 yards. I got no issues. But if you said you just got to go ahead out and live in the bush, which, I head out into the bush quite often. Blessed to live in surrounded by vast wilderness areas that if I spent my whole life exploring, I would probably just scratch the surface. If you said I can just go out and take a long gun and I have to survive, I'm going to take the shotgun. If I'm not going out for a specific purpose, to hunt wolf, to hunt elk, you said you can just go out and you gotta survive off the land, and I have done this, and the shotgun is the best tool. So what if I come across some big grouse or some chukar or some quail, which I did this morning? I could take an elk with a shotgun. I could take quail with a shotgun. Now with a good 30-06 or whatever your favorite cartridge is, I could take a elk. But even if I shoot a quail, 20 yards away, because he stopped in the middle of a path and is not moving, even if I shoot him with the .06, probably not a lot left to eat, which defeats the purpose of me shooting it. So it's not as versatile. But whether you choose a rifle or a shotgun, I'm not here to really debate that today. But modern long gun philosophy. Can you, number one, put food on the table? Can you get effective first, second, third round hits on target in a variety of field conditions with that weapon? Let's talk about the martial aspect. Let's talk about fighting. I didn't put it in the bio because it's an older bio, but I am currently now, for you guys that don't listen to every episode, I'm currently professionally gunfighting again. I'm private security contracting work. Now, this podcast has not yet become a full-time income. If you want to support this podcast, all the buzzwords: small business, veteran-owned, gluten-free. Consider becoming a patron and supporting the show. But as you surmise from the bio and my current job besides the podcast, I'm a professional gunfighter. I've got, by God's grace, He's gotten me through a lot of sticky situations, not because I'm bigger or badder or better, because God had mercy on me and had a purpose for me. Hopefully part of that purpose is teaching you guys. I've been on the wrong end of bullets flying through the air more than I care to remember. And again, my training and experience dictates my thoughts on the matter. But similar things apply. And I didn't just come with this off the cuff. I've thought about this, and I did a whole special episode for the patrons. But first, second, third round hits on target quickly. And being able to get multiple hits on multiple targets quickly. Now, in normal times, semi-normal, the new normal, whatever, shy of the end of the world as we know it, man. Shy of zombie, AI, chipmunk robots that have rabies, running rampant and nukes dropping out of the sky. Shy of that, in semi-modern society, grid up kind of times, you're way more likely to use a handgun to defend yourself outside the home when you're out and about, because it's what you have on you. Now, I don't recommend handguns for home defense. I've done whole episodes on it because people love that. And people, even though you can tell them till they're blue in the face, the handgun is not as effective as a long gun. Period. End of story. It's not as easy to shoot. It's not as powerful. It's not as effective unless you go to the ridiculous. If you compare like a Ruger 1022 to a Desert Eagle, but unless you go to the ridiculousness of the scale, they're just nowhere near as effective, right? A 9mm is nowhere near as effective as double-up buck. You can get mad at that if you want. Even the mighty 45 is not nearly as effective as a payloaded double-up buck. We carry handguns because it's what we can have on us. It's what's practical to have on us. It's what I have on me right now. When I took the dog for a run this morning, it's what I had on me. But this episode's about long guns. So it's way more likely you're going to use a handgun outside the home because it's what you have on you. You may run into a situation now or in the future where you use a long gun. And this does happen. The first active shooter that I can think of was the bell tower shooter in Texas. Way predates Columbine. But that guy, it was a law enforcement officer of some sort. I don't remember if he was a deputy or a city cop or whatever. But there was a guy there with his rifle, a civilian. And he basically, tells that guy, "You're coming with me." And the guy asks, "Are we playing for keeps?" And they go up and they take out this bell tower shooter, a citizen with his rifle. It does happen. The media might not want to, put that on display, but stuff like that does happen. So whether we're talking about home defense, which I think should be a long gun, or we're talking about something outside the home, like obviously that guy had a gun in his vehicle, your truck gun, your trunk gun, whatever, similar things apply. If we're talking about a martial aspect, getting a first fast hit on target is that skill is so important. I can't overstate that. You got a 20-pound rifle and you can hit at 1,000 meters, a silver dollar. That takes a remarkable amount of skill, but that's way less practical than you being able to snap shoot, go from some kind of practical ready position to getting hits on target quickly for a real-world martial context. That's way more important. If you just look at real modern warfare, real defensive encounters, real police uses of long guns, real civilian uses of long guns, World War I, World War II, it's just a way more applicable skill. Being able to get fast first-round hits on target and follow-up shots, because, unlike movies, if a good guy shoots a bad guy, he doesn't just get shot and fly 20 feet back and just the fight's over. Like, sometimes people take more than one shot, unless you're talking about a shotgun with slugs or buckshot if you get a decent hit. But other things like a 223, 5.56, you're probably going to require multiple hits. Being able to get a first round hit and a good acceptable target zone quickly, and consecutive hits on target or hits on multiple targets. Talking about real possibilities that have been around in our, even modern American culture. Multiple adversaries, rioting, looting, civil unrest. Teams of active shooters instead of one lone gunman. Getting multiple hits on target. Now, I talked about rate of fire and consecutive hits on target. Your bolt action is not just as good as a semi-auto. It's just not. For this martial application. For a hunting application, it's arguably better. For a martial application, semi-auto is better. And no, full auto is not better than semi-auto. Semi-auto is better. Those of you that think that full auto is practical in a shoulder-fired weapon, all I can say is you probably haven't shot a lot of full auto shoulder-fired weapons. I have shot more full auto than I care to remember. It's fun the first time you do it. But as far as shoulder-fired weapon goes, not very practical. If you want a practical full auto, put it on a bipod or a tripod and shoot it from the prone on the ground. But not really applicable in most modern contexts for what we're talking about today. Semi-auto is your baby. It should be. Now, can you defend your life? Can you use a bolt action 30-06 in a martial context? Of course you can. We did in World War I. Many did in World War II. It certainly can be done, but it's not just as good as, right? When we went into World War II with the Garand, by the end of World War II or shortly after, every other dominant power in the world put aside their bolt-action rifles and grabbed a semi-auto. Because we were in the era where you could have fast, handling, effective, reliable semi-autos. They are better for the martial aspect, the martial context. They are reliable. If you get a good quality one, they are faster. Now, am I saying that no other gun is effective? No, I'm not saying that. I just did an episode recently, came out on crossover carbines. You could conceivably have, a rifle that was decent for both, or a shotgun that's decent for both. It's the crossover, though, it's never going to be as good. It's like a multi-tool, right? If you consider a multi-tool, like a Leatherman, it's got a lot of good tools on there. It's got a good screwdriver. It's got a good pair of pliers. But you're better off if you need to use pliers a lot for a really good set of purpose-built pliers and a really good set of screwdrivers, of different sizes. Will the Leatherman work most of the time? Yeah, it'll get the job done, but it's not the best tool for the job. A really, really good purpose-built hunting rifle is better than some kind of quasi-Frankenstein crossover. A really, really good defensive carbine is better at the defensive use, right? Daniel Defense Mark 18 is a fine defensive rifle. Not a good hunting rifle. Yes, I know you can kill deer with a 223. It's not good for it. It's not the best. I don't think anybody would argue that it's the best hunting rifle. A Winchester Pre-64 Model 70, arguably the best hunting rifle ever made by human hands ever. Is one of those in 30-06 certainly capable of defensive use? Yeah, for sure. It is not just as good as a Daniel Defense Mark 18. It's just not, so don't pretend that it is, and just know that if you're using that, it's a handicap. You don't get extra points in a gunfight. The other guy's not going to be like, oh, you're shooting a bolt action? I'll turn around, close my eyes, and count to 10. We're just going to make this a fair fight. It's not how that works. Can it be used? Yes. It's not just as good as, so don't live in that just as good as fantasy world where you think you're, a Finnish sniper running around in the winter war with a bolt action tactical telephone pole Mosin Nagant, and it's just as good as a modern rifle. It is not. Use those tools because that's what they had. If they had something better, they would have. If Wyatt Earp had a STI 2011 with a Trijicon RMR, he probably would have rocked it. He used good tools that were available and reliable and functional at the time. Right? Colt Single Action Army was like one of the pinnacles of technology of the time. Is a good handgun. It's not just as good as an STI 2011 for a modern gunfight. It's just not. So don't live in the just as good as fallacy. Now, if somebody's trying to kill me, or my wife, or a little girl, or an old lady in a movie theater, and for some weird reason, what I have is a Colt Single Action Army, will I skin that smoke wagon and go to work? Yeah, I will, but it's not just as good as my EDC carry gun. And if your normal EDC carry gun is not just as good as a Colt Single Action Army, you probably should rethink your EDC gun. But anyway, I digress. This is about long guns. Fast consecutive hits on target. So reasonable rate of fire. And we're talking about shotguns. That could be a pump. Again, pump is not just as good as a semi-auto. It has certain advantages. If we're talking about rifles, bolt action, pump action, which is often forgot about, but the 760 is a fine rifle. Lever action. If we're talking about a martial aspect, semi-auto, a good reliable one, is better. It's better. That doesn't mean you can't use a, lever action 357 in a martial context. You certainly can. Are you trying to have this one gun that can do a lot of things? Because, a pump action 12 gauge is a good choice. A lever action 357 Magnum. Provided, in my case, it's stainless steel and it has a good optic on it. Not the worst choice ever. I wouldn't consider it a semi-auto. I wouldn't want to deploy with it to the sandbox over a Daniel Defense Mark 18 or a Colt M4. It's not just as good as, right? If it was, then we would send our frontline infantry into combat with a lever action 30-30 and be like, it was good enough for John Wayne, it's good enough for me. It's not how that works. But it'll work if you have to use it. You're looking for that good crossover. Will it kill a deer at reasonable ranges? Yeah. Will it work for defense? Yeah. Does it check the boxes? Hopefully, in your situation, it will. So, modern long gun philosophy. Can you put meat on the table with it? Are you confident you can defend? You can with your rifle, not somebody else. A cowboy action shooter can run this short-stroked gamer lever gun with powder puff loads really fast. That's great. That doesn't mean that you can. Can you put food on the table with that long gun? Because because you've done it. Not in theory. In theory, you can win the lottery this month. Or if you're single, I don't know who's hot right now. If you're single, in theory, Taylor Swift could get your number from somebody and call you up this month and be like, hey, I'd like to get married to you. In theory, that could happen, but I wouldn't hold my breath on it. Can you put meat on the table with your long gun? Are you confident, and you never know what's going to happen, but are you reasonably confident that your training, skills, and experience with the gun that you have in your hands can defend you and your loved ones from enemies foreign and domestic? Can you get good hits on target, first, second, third round hits on one target or multiple targets at reasonable ranges and real world positions, not off a rest at the range, not I can shoot a little tiny cloverleaf group at the range off a rest, because gunfights and hunting don't generally happen off a rest. Can you do that? Are you confident that you can do that? That's my thought on modern long gun philosophy. And again, you may disagree. I would love to hear some feedback on this episode, what you think. I know this may have offended some people that think they're, I like the Mosin Nagant. I like shooting Mosin Nagants, but your Mosin Nagant is not just as good as a Daniel Defense Mark 18. It's just not. So I know I might have offended some people, but I'm here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to speak the truth. If you're offended by me, but you see the wisdom in it and you change your ways and it saves your life one day, or you feed your family one day, I'm cool with that. I'm not the person that really worries about and cares about what people think about me. And I know that a lot of people, blows my mind, a lot of people are like that. They just care what other people think about them. Maybe care a little bit less about what other people think about you and care about doing the right thing. Modern rifle philosophy. It is worth thinking about. With that, your tactical tip of the day. Do you have, and I've done a whole series on truck guns, it did pretty well, but it's been a while. Do you have a bunch of guns at home in a safe or whatever that you basically might not even have them, might as well not have them, they might as well be on the moon? If you're at work and something goes sideways, or you're at the mall, do people still go to malls? I don't know. I live tiny and semi-off-grid, guys. I'm a little bit out of it. When you're at the Starbucks, when you're at the driving range, whatever people do, and something goes down, those guns at home in the safe may as well be on the moon, as far as you're concerned. Do you have a gun in your vehicle? Do you keep a gun in your vehicle? What happens if somebody breaks into my car and takes my gun? Well, it's called money. You buy another one. It'll be okay. What happens if you need a long gun and you don't have one, and then you or somebody else dies? Right? There's risk both ways. So, I'm telling you have to, but really consider a practical, like long gun that we talked about today, and I don't care what you choose. A practical long gun in your vehicle, because it is a force multiplier even over a handgun. So, consider having one in your vehicle, in your trunk, in your car. Just tactical tip of the day. Consider being well armed and well regulated. Not theoretically at the range and then you go home and lock your gun in a safe. I mean, that's cool if that's what you want to do, but if you consider it your responsibility as a man to not just protect yourself but those around you, there may arise a situation one day where having a long gun accessible is an advantage. Your tactical verse of the day. But you shall destroy their altars, break their sacred pillars, and cut down their wooden images, for you shall worship no other God. For the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Exodus 34. Idols were not just something that happened in the ancient world, like, oh, look at these stupid primitive people that, made a golden sun and worshipped it, or they worshipped a golden calf or whatever. Idols are alive and well today. Guns can even be an idol. They're tools. Use them. Grow the talents God's given you with them. Use them to protect life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, feed your family. Don't idolize them. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.